take action on that today, but next meeting, we would like to be able to get specific on that and talk about some, sorry, yeah, it's the single page, single double-sided, yep. Task 3A, yep.
So can I ask a question? I know we can't take official action on anything today, but are we going to go ahead and discuss this before we move to goals, or what's the thought?
Let's discuss, yes.
Let's discuss these items.
Sure.
My first question on the handout, Troy, is the section that's purpose and intent. Is that right out of the scope?
That is exactly out of
Okay.
the technical guidance, yes, ma'am. Yes, I did summarize it a little bit to try to make it a little easier to digest, but without having to read 145 pages is the guidance. We've got it over here if we need to reference any other pages. Ron's got it all memorized, by the way.
So our real discussion items then is on the back of the page, this section where you've titled potential higher standards, correct?
Those were ideas for discussion, exactly. That was to put out to this group to talk, well, you know, we were going to talk about it in the technical committee and then have more of a focused discussion today, hopefully. But these are the types of things that can be proposed as higher standards. There's also a much longer list actually that's in the guidance document that has a bunch of other potential options. And a lot of it relates to things like, you know, higher freeboard requirements, future conditions analyses, those kinds of things that I think most everybody in here is pretty familiar with.
Is there, you know, I think one of my thoughts is do we need to formulate our goals before we jump to standards, or is everyone comfortable talking about standards first?
I guess I just have a question here. I'm just trying to make sure on these, the statement of purpose versus your benefits and overarching goals, are they?
So
On this sheet, you did a little matrix, you know, that we're talking about. I know this is goals, but I'm just trying to match these up.
So
And some of them, particularly in the statement of purpose, we don't necessarily, that I'm reading here, and I'm just going through this quickly, it doesn't have the protect the environment, for example.
correct. So those are the National Flood Insurance Program overarching goals that are in the standard NFIP floodplain or floodplain management ordinance, or FPO, that communities adopt. That was just there kind of as a reference for you to look at.
Oh, okay.
My hope with that, and I apologize, I didn't do a good job of explaining that, was just to connect how the current regulatory process is set up for communities through the NFIP and what kind of the statements are, and how those goals are set up, so that if we're thinking about our goals for the regional flood plan, we can connect that to what the communities actually are using for the regulatory process. So if we were to have a goal to say that we wanted to, you know, reduce flood losses by 20% or 30% or whatever, you know, where does that fit into how the communities can actually implement that? Because there's the two sides. There's the planning side, right, moving forward, and then there's also the project side.
Environmental issues are under the methods of reducing flood loss. You do have, you know,
Yes.
alteration of the natural floodplain, stream channels, et cetera. So I guess those go hand in hand. They're just not a purpose, but it's a method.
That is
according
correct.
to the NFIP. Okay.
That is
got it.
correct. After you get through this section, in most floodplain ordinances is where it gets into the real technical, you know, definitions and of what is development, what is a floodplain, all that other stuff. But this is kind of the overarching big picture.
Yeah, and this is, and Kara, this is one of the reasons why I was wanting to talk about goals, because I see these two being interconnected.
Me too.
And I think if
My
we,
question too.
so I mean, I guess if we stop and talk about standards, we really need to hear about the
Yeah.
goals.
Right.
So let's do that, and then we'll talk about both of them afterwards. It gets a little confusing, but they are interconnected. So
They're absolutely interconnected, and even the Texas Water Development Guidance says that. It says that they recommend taking these two together in the same meeting.
Okay.
Don't try to
Okay.
do them separately. So I wholeheartly agree.
While
That's why I kept-
do agree, while I do think that there's merit in discussing the standards, because I think they fall in within those goals in broader sense. Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds great.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Maybe Neffy, you could just explain it to me. We keep talking about Atlas 14 like that's a static thing that's never going to change. And as I understand, that is the document today that you use for, or everybody's using for updating flood maps. But that may not, there may be a Atlas 16 next week or next month or next year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, literally, it's probably not next year, but it could be 5 years or 3 years. I don't know. So when we identify update floodplains for Atlas 14, is that just code to make sure that it's using the best available data? Or I'm just trying to get a sense if we're locked into Atlas 14 and it becomes moot in two or 3 years.
I think so.
Just a clarification.
I think there's a couple of ways of approaching this, and certainly open to recommendations. But today, Atlas 14 is the higher standard. And I don't know that all communities have officially adopted Atlas 14 as their regulatory standard. I know in San Antonio, Bexar County, we have. So that's why it's like no big deal to us. We do recognize that, 10 years ago, we had a different standard. Today, it's Atlas 14. 10 years from now, will we have a different standard? I think our climate projections show that we may. And that is one of the reasons why, Suzanne, the discussion that we were having earlier is very valid, because I think the 500-year encompasses, maybe creates a factor of safety, if you will, that encompasses these variations in rainfall standards. So that's why you're right in that there could be another Atlas coming up someday, but today this is the higher standard. And from what I'm looking at the consultants, not every community within our basin has fully adopted Atlas 14 as their standard.
That's true.
So that's why it does appear as a higher standard, recommended higher standard. But let's talk about these goals, because I think overall we got to use the best available data, which I think we're trying.
Real quick, Atlas, about how soon this is going to be. Atlas 14, that's the year it started. 14. That's how long it took to get all the maps rolled out. And I think maybe before that, I think it was the 70s when that was it'd been 30 years since we updated rainfall data. So I don't think we're gonna. Hopefully, we won't see a Atlas 2021.
There was a limited update in 2000, Asquith's paper in 2004, which
That
we
was
did
just in
the
Texas,
DFIRM.
right?
We did the DFIRM on. So yeah, it's been 15 years. I think Neffy though hit the nail on the head, and I agree. Is that it's that question of what's an appropriate factor of safety, and should we bring more of a factor of safety back into at least the planning process? I think that's the place where it's appropriate. And that's where that question of, is it 1 foot above or 2 feet above or 3 feet above? What's that appropriate factor of safety?
Troy, I'm going to challenge you and Ron if we can speed it up a little bit. We're starting to lose.
We will certainly try.
So please do what you can.
Okay. Caitlin, do you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll go through that pretty quick. So this was distributed. I don't want to read through all this, but as we're thinking, because we're not going to vote on goals today, I put some information together on what SMART goals are. It's just high-level thinking about SMART goals. So look at this over the next few days or over the next month as we're thinking about setting goals. So if you look at the SMART criteria, though, what I do want to point out is that the guidance that we have from the state for setting the goals is very much aligned with what people would call SMART criteria. And so we want to make sure that our goals are achievable, that they're reasonable for this region, that they are very tailored to this region, and that we can put some kind of measurement on them that makes sense. Now, one thing I do want to bring up in some of the other regions that we are talking to the Texas Water Development Board about, this is something that I learned just in the last few days, that the Texas Water Development Board has given guidance that right now we don't have to have measurements on the goals. So as that will help shorten the discussion here in a minute, let's ignore all the text in red, which is basically how we're going to measure the individual goals themselves. We do not have to have that decided necessarily when the goals, or at least, our first draft of the goals are voted on. Because we have some technical information that we can't really set standards on some of these goals right now anyway. We don't know how many homes are in the floodplain. We don't know necessarily what that future risk is. So we can't say if we're going to mitigate for future risk when we really haven't even had a chance to define it yet. So I want to point that out before I forget about it. So I did put the purpose and intent for the goals, the overarching purpose and intent from the guidance, and just going to go through those real quick. So to identify and reduce the risk and impact to life and property that already exists. So again, very similar goals to what's in the NFIP. And then avoid increasing or creating new flood risk by addressing future development within the areas known to have existing or future flood risk. So that's where those goals do have to address the future flood risk. We need to be looking at that. Now, Kara asked a good question last time about the categories of goals. So the overarching goals, we have, I've taken the text out of the guidance again, talking about potential overarching goal categories have been developed to guide the subsequent development of the flood management strategies, the flood management evaluations, and the flood mitigation projects for the San Antonio Regional Flood Planning Region. Now, yes, these are very similar to the other regions, and the reason why is because it all connects to how the FMEs, FMPs, and FMSs have to be developed as we go forward. So we have borrowed that and modified it a little bit from some of the other regions. So we have the 6 categories, and if you count, there's actually 7 in that next list, but funding kind of crosses all of them. So I highlighted it there just to be a potential, thought process as we're looking at the individual goals. The submittal requirements are next. So thinking about what we have to submit for these goals, the description of the goal, the extent or geographic region to which the goal applies. The guidance is try to get goals that cover the entire region. If at all possible, the goals should be consistent across the region, the entire region. So that is part of that guidance. A residual risk that remains after the goal is met, that's both existing and future. The measurement method that will be used to measure the goal attainment. So that's what our metric is or how we're going to measure whether it's attained. And then the overarching goal categories. So those are the things that have to be submitted. Okay, yeah, it's the other document. Does everybody I'm sorry, Morgan, I know you don't have this. That's why we're trying to put it up so you can see what we're talking about. I hope everybody else that was emailed a copy of these so that y'all can see it as we're going through it. So what we did is we looked at all Okay, great. So everybody should have it. Okay, so the preliminary goal statements were developed in a manner to set the stage for specific items that can be quantified and measured throughout the subsequent state flood plan processes. So the rest of the chapters, basically, that's what we're about, right? So if you switch the second page, this was presented last time, but I just want to talk about it real quick. So the flood goal, the categories there, these are what's being used kind of consistently across most of the other regions. I did take this, Ron and I talked about it. We adjusted it to try to be focused on this region. So how each of the categories applies to the different benefits and overarching goals that are on the left is specific to this region. If you go compare it to another region, it'll probably be similar, but it's not exactly the same. And they're qualitative, they're not an exact science, but the idea here is just to generate discussion. We are just trying to put information out for this committee to be able to select goals. So all the information we're presenting here is just guidance on how we think about those goals, not saying that Ron and Troy think these are the goals that we have to have for this region.
Troy, we
Yes,
have an opportunity to maybe give some more definition to the benefits and overarching goals. What it includes. Will it be a part of this discussion then?
Maybe in the table update.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk through the table, or do
No,
you?
I don't
Okay.
need to talk through
Okay.
the table right now, but will a goal of our discussion be to get more definition on what you have in mind as the consultant on each of these benefits and overarching goals, and then how you came about with the rating system?
Debbie, are you asking that you want to understand their assumptions that they made on why one was identified as direct benefit or partial?
Well, increased public awareness to
Mhm.
what comes under that increased public awareness. I know we've got our basics about low water crossings and emergency strategies, but what about alternatives for flood control management, watershed concept, and some of those things?
Right. So there are really no assumptions behind this. This is just a discussion point for putting out a framework to talk about the goals. So increasing public awareness can be anything that this committee decides for it to be.
And that's a part of our duty, is to go through and
That
flesh
is
these
correct.
out.
That is
Okay,
correct.
I understand better.
So,
Thank you.
so this was just to
You
try
can,
to.
you can use any of these or none of these.
That's a great point. Yeah. Or come up with, we can come up with, y'all can come up with anything that, right. That we're trying to get it from here to, this table helps to think about if you've got a goal or a thought, where does it fit and which of these benefits or additional benefits that you think of that you want to add to the discussion, where does it fit? This was just our first cut at it to try to frame that discussion.
Troy, let me
Yes, sir.
interrupt you at this point. We have 15 minutes
Mhm.
until the conclusion of this meeting, and we still have quite a few items to go. Is there any concern if we were to stick around a little bit after 4 o'clock with anybody? I mean, if 4:15 the latest, what about you guys? 4:30-ish the longest?
I think we can make it through because we're gonna just kind of focus on the goal statements.
Okay,
right
because
from now on.
I really think this is some important stuff, and I think we need to get a
Nephew,
really good
I think
handle.
if I can make a recommendation, since we're not voting on it today, and we're going to have another technical committee meeting, let's let Troy and I kind of Troy will go through these high level. That way, people can take these home, let it marinate.
Yeah,
We'll come back with the
exactly.
technical committee, hone these in, and
Yep.
be able to have more defined discussion at the next meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that'll work. I
Okay.
think that'll work.
So let me focus on the specific goal statements now, and really, maybe Debbie, kind of part of what you're getting at with questioning or asking what's behind these overarching goals and the benefits, hopefully is explained a little bit in the statement. So under category 1, education and outreach, so an idea, right, is to increase the amount of flood education and outreach opportunities to improve awareness of flood hazards and future participation throughout the flood region. So that's an idea of what could be encompassed in education and outreach. It's up to y'all to decide if you want to change that. And what we would love is for, to get feedback on all of this. Is that the right statement? Do you want it to be something different? Is there other terms that you would like
So
to
let me be clear. What you're asking us to do is to look at those specific goals that you've identified there. Not necessarily look at the red text because we're still not ready to identify
Exactly.
performance measures.
Mhm.
But look at those categories. Do we agree with that? Do we want to change that? Do we want to add something new, or do we want to get rid of it?
I'll tell you right now, across the regions, we've seen anywhere from 4 categories to 7. We've seen anywhere from 12 goals to 35. So it's totally up to this committee. The guidance, they all just have to fit the guidance that is coming from Texas Water Development Board. That's why I put that in there at the beginning. So these specific, so the description of the category itself can be revised, that first sentence, and then the individual specific goal statements are up to this committee to decide. These are just ideas for discussion. So that first one, increasing the number of public stakeholder participants in the regional flood planning data collection process by X% each cycle. As Ron mentioned, we've seen 15 to 20 to 30%. We know that this cycle, there's a lot going on, especially in the lower basin. So it could be a goal to say, you know what, by the time we end the next cycle, we want to have 50%. It's an idea. It's just a thought. Is that something that's important to this committee? If it's not, then we chunk it out, replace it with something else, or we don't have a goal.
The other thing is, while you don't have to, sorry, Susanna, while you don't have to think about the actual dates in red or percentages, just remember one is a short-term goal and one is a long-term goal. Something that can be
That is set. Yeah.
that is set. Something that can be done by 2033 and 2053.
Yep.
And if you can have just a short-term goal, but if you have a long-term goal, you need to have an accompanying short-term goal.
Right.
So just as we go through it.
And what's the
Would it be-
duration for long and short?
It's
10 and 30.
30.
10 and 30, yes.
Can I make a proposal to the technical committee that the education and outreach category be attacked by the outreach committee? And we take that off your plate from the technical committee? The goals relative to education and outreach?
It's a good idea.
Is
I
there
like
a
it.
problem with the technical committee that we take those?
Since our chairman left.
Okay, no. Those seem to be more things that our outreach committee should talk about versus the technical
Sure.
committee.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I won't read through the rest of those. We did highlight in bold, I'll just point out that third goal there under education outreach is some of the things that Ron and I kind of talked about we thought was important. If you look at our region and the flood planning risks or the flood risk that we have, we think it is important to try to continue to have public outreach. Also, helping the floodplain administrators to understand their role is something that we think that is important. So that
Can you
was.
give us a deadline on when you need these comments back?
So we have to post 2 weeks before the next full committee meeting, and we have to post, is it 2 weeks before the technical committee? 1 week?
1 week before
Okay.
the technical.
So I would say 2 weeks, we're going to need comments back, a few days before that 2 week deadline. Whatever.
When is that 2 week deadline?
It's probably about 10 days from now.
Because the next flood meeting is 16th at 4:00 is what I have. Is that still the number, next meeting?
The
of
16th, so
this
2 weeks before then?
Of November?
I have November 16th at 4:00 held on my calendar.
That is correct. So perhaps the 9th of November, would that work for you all?
November 9th, I need comments from all of you guys, please.
So what that means
Por
is
favor.
we cannot have a technical committee between now and then because the 9th is 2 weeks from today.
Exactly.
Just for a little clarity, so all of the subcommittees, they follow 7 days notice, which is 3 days materials. And then the group, if your next meeting, you're going to have an action item on goals, the notice would be 14 days, but the materials would be 7 days.
Okay.
So the notice is always longer than the materials.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Marty.
7 and 3 for subcommittee.
I'd still say if we could do it,
You
Yeah.
can't have a technical committee meeting before.
I'd still say if we could do it by the 9th, that way we could take up comments in the technical committee meeting and still have time to do it by then.
Okay.
9th at the
That's
latest.
your
I'd love
homework,
them
guys.
earlier.
That's
Okay,
your
so
homework.
then what would be the deadline for the materials? She said 7 days?
You're suggesting the 9th, November 9th
November 9th at the
November
latest.
9th, have
If we
your
can get it
comments
earlier,
back
that'd be
to-
great.
to Kendall.
Okay, but then 7,
I think the
7 days
9th
is
the
only
materials.
for posting the notice.
That's just the notice.
okay, but she said you had to have the materials that are going to be acted on at the meeting by how many days in advance? 7.
days.
So that would mean 7, do you count weekends?
No, it's 3.
Because if you're looking, I'm just saying, if you're
Yeah.
looking at the 17th,
You have to post it 7 days, and your data's required 3 days.
Suzanne's talking about this group, the materials, the revised
Right.
goals would have to be posted. The packet for this
Yes.
meeting has to be posted by November 9th if we're meeting on the 16th.
16th, right.
Oh, yes.
So you'd have to
Right.
have the materials, you'd have to have a meeting next week of this technical group,
Mhm.
because otherwise you have to have the materials ready by the 9th.
So next
Oh,
Tuesday?
right. So the deadline to submit comments on these particular, now mind you, it's not the actual, not the text in red,
Right.
but it is the categories, those large,
The goals.
By-
and-
Tuesday,
Can you do that?
November 2nd.
And it depends on whether you guys think you're going to
A
take
week from today.
action on the goals in the next meeting, because only certain things require 14 days notice. So
Yeah.
if you're going to
Right.
vote on the goals in the next meeting, then it would be 14 days notice, 7 days materials. But if you're not, then it could be
Right.
7-day notice meeting, but anyways.
We're trying to vote on the goals in the next meeting to try to, because that is a critical path item.
So that is, I guess, a question, I think maybe a discussion. We hear your timeline and all, but even if we all turn in comments, you know, we're not going to have a chance to talk about them as a group until the next meeting. There's likely to be, you know, tweaks and changes after that meeting. I mean, I can't imagine we're going to come in and everybody's going to have all the same comments and they're going to be able to reconcile and we go. So to me, it's almost 2 meetings, second when they're adopted.
What we can do is we can compile all the received comments and then send that out to planning group members so they have access to review everybody's comments prior.
Yeah, but I do agree with Kara that I think the most of them, I think we'll be okay with them, but I think there's going to be 1 or 2 things there that we're going to have discussion and may not even agree on some of them. What would happen to the schedule if we delayed it for another meeting?
I mean, nothing, essentially. I mean,
It's, it does. It compresses our work more and more.
At the end of the day, for our deliverable in January,
If we work backwards,
we don't. I mean, like, we don't have. I guess we don't have to have a goal decided on by January, but we'll have to probably list something that to show how are we going to show progress. You know, I don't want to show progress as we've talked about.
but no, I'm confident that by January we'll have the majority of the goals agreed upon. There may be 1 or 2 little sticking items that we may not completely have consensus on that I don't, what the thing is, Ron, is I don't want to rush this. This is too important for our region to hold up the whole progress for a couple of things. It might be some of, and I don't know, I'm just guessing. Something with emergency response, something, I don't want to hold up everything for that little bit. And I'm wondering, can we go ahead and submit 99.5% of the goals with that 0.5 left over that as we move on, we might redefine, if you will.
Yes,
You
I
know what
think,
I'm saying?
I don't see a reason why we couldn't say that they're draft goals for now.
Yeah. They're not set in stone goals. I mean,
Right, and that's
yeah.
kind of my point,
Right.
and that's why I would rather give us the time and liberty to discuss them, understand them, and mind you, the reason why I really want us here to understand it is because at the end of the day, we're the salespeople. We're going to be meeting with commissioners. We're going to be meeting with Sierra Club. We're going to be meeting with groups that are going to want to know these answers. And I think that everybody here in this committee and online, we need to understand it. And that's the reason why I'm kind of advocating for time.
And
I might
flesh out
suggest
some of the
talking about,
specifics.
An extra meeting, like maybe an additional meeting in November, December. I think that while you can make sure that your goals are drafts, and I wanted to circle back to a comment the consultant made earlier about not needing specific metrics at the tech memo deliverable date. While all those things are true, you guys will have a lot to do next year. Between January and August, when the draft plan is due, it will be a lot to accomplish. So what you can do now to set those targets and get these goals finalized will allow you the time to focus on other tasks come the new year. And there's also a lot of benefit to making your goals really firm on the front end of your planning so that your goals are pushing your planning cycle forward and they're impacting the way that your consultant's doing the rest of the tasks and things like that. So just cautioning you guys against waiting too long to finalize your goals and too long to put specific metrics to them, and possibly a suggestion for a third meeting before the end of the year to make progress.
Understood, Morgan. And I will tell you that my thought is that as we get into more of the technical, I think some of these goals will maybe take a different skew or angle. And I think we're going to be working towards development of that. So let's work to come up with these strategies, and then as we move forward, I fully anticipate we're probably going to have to readjust them and recalibrate them, if you will. It is the 2-hour mark is coming along, and I know we do need to move along.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask if we can bring this item to a conclusion. And then I am also going to ask if we can table item number 9 for next time that we meet, just simply because of time, if that is okay. Any final comment from you guys?
Just would encourage everybody to please read through these in detail. If you have any questions, email out, but also look at the guidance on this particular task, because there is a whole nother list of goals, optional goals. It's thought provoking, and that's the idea behind it from the Texas Water Development Board. If there's things that it's like, no way we're ever going to do that, strike it out. But also think about how many goals overall are achievable for this region for the next planning cycle, and whether you want to be really, really audacious, or whether we just want to, set some
And I do
goals
want to
that-
echo what Ron said, is that please keep in mind we need to be able to identify, while we don't have to think about it right now, the short term, long term is also a piece of that. So think about that as you're thinking of these ideas, reading carefully through that goal.
And I think too, which of these goals do we really think are going to move the needle? I mean, Region 11, I know we're probably not going to do our regional reports today, but they don't have, they have like 11 goals.
Yep.
Or something like that. I mean,
And
it's not, and I'm not saying they're the right goals. I'm just saying they have fewer goals. And I think if we can think about these and what in that category, what 1 or 2 in those categories do we really feel would move the needle?
Mhm.
It's kind of like anytime you do goal setting, even a strategic plan, you sort of look at the ones that mean that you're moving in the right direction. There may be other goals that
Sure.
that you're measuring, but you're putting your eyes on the prize, on the big ones. And
any of these goals could be things that can be added in the next planning cycle.
exactly.
We don't have to stick them all in here now. They can be stuff that we say we just don't have enough information, and down the road, somebody wants to add them back in. So that would be my guidance, is to look at first look at the categories, the 6 categories, really think about the categories, what fits into the categories for you, and then look at the individual idea statements, because that's really what they are, and think about whether those make sense for this region, and modify them or strike them out or add additional ones. That's really what I wanted to get through. I did not intend to read all these to you, because y'all can all read, and y'all are all very aware of what flood planning is.
And we need them by Tuesday.
I would request them, yes, by next Tuesday.
Okay, so we have some homework this weekend to do. Thank you, Troy. Let's move on to item, I'd like to table item number 9 for, item number 10. Unless there's a earth-shattering idea that they've come up with, can we?
No, I think Suzanne and I both have the summary. We're behind the other regions.
Okay. I'm assuming Dave Mock, I'm assuming you kind of agree.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Does tabling item number 9 have any impact to our sponsor? Caitlin, Aaron, anybody?
That's more of a question for our technical consultant. This is just for the extra funds that the Texas Water
Oh, do you
Development Board
want
has given
money?
us.
We can't access those for a while, so I think that shouldn't be an issue for us.
In that case, let's go on to item number
Are we,
11.
before we go to public comment, are we talking meetings of the 2 committees, or are those going to be doodle polls? And I mean, we don't have a lot of time to do them, so I'm concerned even a doodle poll takes time to fill out.
I was
Okay.
going to do that item
Okay.
12. Item number 11, do we have any public comments?
No further public comment.
Okay, thank you. Item number 12, date and potential agenda items for the next meeting. So far, we have from November 16th at 4. What about the technical and communications subcommittee? How are we going to handle those? Are we going to, we need to set a time and date, put it on everybody's calendar for both?
Would you just like us to choose a date, Or I don't know if doodle poll is not going to work. What's the fastest way we can confirm something with y'all?
Everybody look at their calendars right now.
Please.
Yeah.
We basically have to do next week,
Yes.
next Thursday morning.
So for technical committee next Thursday morning,
Do them. I can do that.
We can have Mira do it, or Brian.
is there any concern, Caitlin, with adding a virtual option to the technical committee or to the subcommittees?
No, for the first session, I was just asked to do in person only, but for the rest, we can happily do hybrid.
Okay.
And as long
So
as
Thursday morning for technical?
yeah, and isn't it as long as the person who's the chair is
Is
there
present.
in person?
That is correct. So
If you didn't vote, so somebody's got to be there in person, and then they're the stuck person.
but for the technicals, I guess Steve or Debbie would have to be there.
Or me.
Or Derek?
Or Derek, yeah.
I think Steve.
Okay.
I think Steve would prefer Derek to take over that position, and I
I
can
had that
definitely back
sense
him
as
up.
well.
What about the communications? What about the communications group? What day works for you for the communications group?
I'll ask in a second.
What works for you, Suzanne?
Well, are we?
I don't necessarily say, Suzanne, that we're going to have anything that we'll be voting on. So it won't have to be.
Can we do a doodle poll for that one?
Well, we're supposed to go over our 3 goals.
Oh, that's right, because we gave them the.
Sorry about that.
So,
Keep me in line.
hey, so
Sorry, I was going to point out there's some goals under category 2 that we call out each day.
category 2.
Flood warning and readiness, yeah.
Okay, we can do that too.
We need to have a discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So, Steve, you're in that committee with me. Are you, I mean,
What's your calendar looking like?
My
Sir?
understanding, Brian Yanta is also joining the outreach committee. So
David-
that'll need to be
David
virtual.
Mock is also on there. What's your calendar looking like, David? Dave Mock
can we, what do you,
for next week?
can you do like Wednesday at like 8 early?
Wednesday, what day?
The
Wednesday,
3rd?
The third?
Do I hear breakfast? Is there going to be
Start
breakfast?
early?
Breakfast.
We can,
Yeah.
Can
are
do
we
it the
talking
3rd.
8 o'clock- Are we talking 8 o'clock in San Antonio?
well, we'll give you a virtual option.
That would be delightful.
I could do the 3rd.
3rd at 8?
Dave, are you in a different time zone or something?
Can you?
Mountain
Close
Standard?
to it.
That works. But also for the technical, we have Thursday morning. What specific time?
9:30 to 10. Okay.
Starting at 9:30, we need more than.
Oh, yeah, either. Sorry, starting at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, something of that sort to
Because we'll probably
avoid
go
rush
8
hour
to,
traffic.
like 9:30, 8 to 9:30. Where do you want to meet? Do we meet here?
You can meet here.
Meet here? Okay. So communications, I mean.
Okay,
outreach.
we have, okay, for the overall committee meeting, November 16th at 4. Oh, that's right. That's yeah, that's right. This is the later one.
This is the public meeting.
And then for the technical committee will be next Thursday, November 4th at 9:30
9:30.
for the technical subcommittee. For the communications subcommittee, we're looking at Wednesday at 8 o'clock.
8 to 9:30 here at the River Authority, I guess, right?
Well, all the meetings will be here.
Oh, they are? Okay.
All the meetings will be here. And there will be a virtual option for both the technical and the communications subcommittees.
And just to review the items that we will be covering at the next full committee meeting, just to make sure that we have it. That approval of the minutes from this meeting, the task 3A, 3B goal setting, the negotiation and execution of the contract amendments. Nefi, you requested a review of the budget that has been used to date and how it has been used. And then we need to get Derek a nameplate, and that's about it.
And we also
minutes
have
from
to approve
last
the minutes from
meeting.
the last meeting too.
Yes.
We
Yes.
deferred that one. So we'll
I
have to
appreciate-
approve minutes for 2 meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate the virtual option. I'll try to be there in person, but I'm an hour and 15 minutes away with zero traffic. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, that could be a little bit challenging potentially.
Oh, no, certainly get it.
Let's just do the virtual option. It's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just going to be going over those goals. I think it's fine if you can participate virtually. It's just going to be a small group. I don't want you to have to feel like you have to drive in. I don't think that's necessary at all.
That works great, yeah.
Yeah.
Nephew, do we have December meetings set? Because I'm just thinking the comments at the beginning were get it on calendars and would you get holidays, vacation, et cetera. I don't think December this meeting is set yet, is it?
We
Yeah,
have a
it is.
planning
Or am I
group
missing
meeting
it?
on the 21st of December
We
that
have-
is scheduled.
Oh, that's popular.
Yeah.
Okay.
December 21st is this meeting. Who's going to actually be there is the question. I'll be there.
I'll be there. Caitlin, can you put that on my
Should we-
calendar or send me the invite? 'Cause
I
don't
guess
have
the
that one.
question is, Morgan felt like we needed to have another meeting in November.
How?
So I don't know. So I'm just because so that we can adopt them at the December meeting is sort of what the indication was.
I was just hearing from your reports that you feel like your region is behind other regions, and I think that's a fair assessment as far as. And I was just saying, like, if you guys want to think about having 3 meetings before the tech memo is due, just to make sure you're meeting those deadlines as far as what you need to adopt and what you need to talk about. Because I think there was concern about you guys maybe not being able to adopt goals, or at least a final version of goals at the next meeting.
No, Morgan, I think that if we have a technical committee meeting and they're able to provide a good recommendation, I think we will be okay.
Okay.
And that's why my original comment to our consultants I want to make sure that during the technical committees, we're focused on these items. So let's do that.
The only other thing I might add is what if we added a meeting like that first full week of December, the 6th through the 10th, in case needed. The other alternative was if that meeting happened, then we could cancel, and we got them done at that meeting, we could cancel the 21st. Because do people really want to meet the week of the 21st?
Yeah, or I was going to say, if you wanted to move your December meeting up and then have a meeting the first week of January before the tech memo is due, just as like sort of a safeguard to make sure you have a meeting that you could take any final actions in case there are any hiccups that first week.
Move to the
of January.
14th of December?
I can't, but I'll do.
You want to put a placeholder on that
Different
week? Put a placeholder on the week of the 7th, just in case we need it?
I would. I mean, that's my thoughts, but what's the group think?
I'd be okay with one on the 7th itself.
I agree.
I can't do that day. What time would you be looking at?
On Tuesday, it doesn't matter, whatever time.
Yeah.
I can make whatever work. That
Let's put a hold on.
I couldn't do it till 3.
Suzanne, you can't in the morning? Let's put a hold on December 7th in the morning. And that'll be a meeting. If we need to meet once again to discuss final items, we will. If we don't, then, but let's just put a hold on it, please.
So you'd be holding what time?
In the morning,
The morning.
9.
Okay.
But it's provisionary. I mean,
Sorry.
if we don't get things accomplished, then
You're
we'll
out
have
of
to
the
meet.
country that week.
If we're able to get it done, then,
I'm trying to
okay.
get nature-based solutions on the Gulf Coast District. There you go.
Let's go on to, I think we're slowly losing people here. So,
Yes. Sorry.
agenda item number 13. Let's adjourn. Any motion on the floor to adjourn?
so moved. Kara.
All right.
Second? Jeff?
Second.
Jeff Carroll, second. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan.
Oh, what a great trip. I know several.